Streaming.
Flab it.
Streaming. Streaming.
Flab dab it.
Streaming.
No, stop.
Do 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 do.
You.
And
are
there we
the-
go. We are live.
Do do do
Why
listening
can't I
to-
be
do
placed
do
here?
do.
Okay, I'm gonna try this.
All right.
All
Are
right.
we live? Oh, it
We are
says
live.
it's live.
To kick off this
It says we'd
stream,
be live.
there's nobody currently here except us. But for future posterity,
Ew.
Posterity.
I want to share something very exciting that we got from Lars. Can I share this? Am I allowed to share this, Lars?
Yeah, share it.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I mean the whole world's gonna see it later on, so why not?
So I need to. Oh boy. Okay, don't look at all my files.
Look at it.
Here it is.
Files.
It's coming through. It's coming through.
Is it raining again? Oi, little.
Wait for it.
Oh, I'm so waterlogged.
That's okay. It just gets more people. Lets more people catch up with us.
Intrigued.
Hopefully.
Nothing is more
Oh.
What
satisfying
is happening?
than cooking a.
There it is.
Oh,
There.
thank
Hold
you.
on. I gotta make sure that this
Okay.
is actually pulling up on YouTube.
I can see it on YouTube.
I mean, I see it. There.
There it is. Lars, tell us about this.
Woo! Okay, so this right here is the cover art for my upcoming steampunk novel, Bleed, Steam, and Steel. And massive shout out has to go to Kevin, an awesome artist from Brazil who did this. So I'm going to definitely make sure I give him way more
We
credit
should,
with like links and everything in like a future video because
Doesn't say if we
he
could put
deserves it.
On the. Could we put a link after this goes? Is that possible? Like change the.
Yeah,
Yeah, I might. I can even
Description
put
of
a
this
link
live
right
stream and
now.
include
I
his link.
believe. Yeah. I think I should be able to. Send me a link and I'll put it in the description. Oh, let's keep
Got it.
looking at
Okay,
this a
yeah,
little bit
I'll-
longer.
so
have
I'll work on getting that
him.
to you.
He's
But yeah,
in my tab.
yeah.
Look at
say
that beautiful
Kevin
artwork.
Sardina.
Kevin
Yeah,
Sardina.
this
Kevin.
this is fantastic, and I'm going to explain what we've got kind of going on here in this image, because like there is some meaning behind it. Like I worked with Kevin to like figure out positions and everything, what should actually be in the shot, and actually you guys all here as well gave some great feedback, such as like how Asuka should be positioned and everything. So here in this image, you have Asuka, who is one of the main characters within the story, and she is one of my favorite characters that I've ever written.
She is my favorite character you've ever written. I will take the plunge.
Yeah, no,
Ooh.
she is
That's
absolutely
cool.
phenomenal, and basically her story is that that she has to save her family from this from like this. I don't like. Oh man, how best to put it? See, this is what's awful when an author starts stumbling over his own words about this. Asuka has to save her family from all-out shame, and it comes
Yeah.
from so many different angles.
Yeah. And I think it's
the
important to
giant-
note that her family is destitute and she's like kind of the last hope to like
Yeah,
bring
exactly.
back her family honor.
And
Bring honor to her family.
bring on to your family. Well, and that's the thing. So the giant machine that you see
It's like
behind
a
her,
steampunk Mulan.
yeah, steampunk Mulan right here, but in Japan, or in a variation
Yes.
of Japan anyway. So the giant machine that you see behind her is a combat suit powered by steam that is called a paladin. That is her family paladin right there. And a paladin costs a lot of money to maintain and to use.
Big
So
bucks.
this has basically made her family destitute to keep up this machine. And it's also not helped along by the fact that her mother is dying from a disease, and her father, before her father passed away, made sure that his wife was taken care of, but the deal required also, once again, tons of money. So the family has basically no funds left. So the wise thing, the thing that most people would do, would be just to sell the paladin and make tons of money off of it and move on. But the paladin is her mother's paladin. She inherited it from her mother. And if she were to sell it, it would basically be like a slap in the face to her mother, and it would seriously diminish the standing of her family. So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. So the only thing that then Asuka feels like she can do is put her skills to work as a soldier and do high stakes duels. So she gets into all of these different kinds of crazy fights against old rivals that she's had and against some new ones. Basically putting all of this money on the line, and each duel just gets crazier and crazier. And so this right here, basically then, the reason for her being where she is she's like pulling out her sword with this paladin looming over her. It's basically there to represent the fact that, like, this right here, this main character who is just, she's so much fun. She has a serious side to her, but there's a playful side to her. She's an extremely dedicated daughter and sister.
And she's precious.
And she's just precious. Like, she's everything that you would want in a fantastic heroine. And yet she has this looming responsibility just hanging over her, the paladin. The paladin represents everything that she wants to be as a soldier, but it also represents everything that could bring her and her family down, which is why the paladin is looming over her in shadow despite everything else being in clear light. So like that was what I was going for with that, which Kevin did a fantastic job of. And the rest of the setting, you have the cherry trees, the cherry blossoms, which just once again harkens back to the fact that she comes from a Japanese-esque place. In this book, it's called Endo. But behind her is not a city in Endo. It's the city of London, spelled with U's because I'm cheap that way. rather than a traditional London, it's a London with U's. So you have
We're just getting way up
London.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's going to be. It's London. Thank you very much.
London.
London. And so the city of London is this industrial complex. It's nasty. It's disgusting. And it's very much in contrast to where she to where she comes from. And London is one of the centerpieces of the book because there are three other heroes within the story, and two of them, Emil, who is Emil is one character. He's not one of the four main characters. Man, here I go stumbling. Lagertha is one of the main characters. Emil is her companion.
Also a girl.
Also, once again, a really, really great girl. Say, Lagertha and Emil come to London in search of something that has gone missing, some vague, mysterious something. And so you get to read about their journey, which is more about faith than about family, which is what Asuka's story is. Asuka's story is family. Lagertha's journey is faith. And Zimon, who is a crippled spy in London, he's a spy master, who is tasked with saving the crown prince from an assassination, which I love writing Zimon's introduction. It is just tons of fun. Basically, like, imagine James Bond in a wheelchair. And
Yeah.
as a snarky like 22-year-old. A snarky 22-year-old James Bond in a wheelchair.
It's Bond. Bonded to this chair.
Are you
Yeah.
going to have Kevin draw?
Yes, I am going to ask Kevin to draw Zimon next, and then
Okay,
go
cool.
to
I
go.
really want to see him.
Yeah. Oh man, Zimon is another one of my favorite characters, and so yeah. Once again, London is very central to a lot of this, and to the left you see a barn. That barn is important for reasons that you're just going to have to read the book for. But this location is important both to London and also to Asuka. And so it's going to be like it's a fun story to see how four separate four separate journeys for four different heroes all converge in a way that is unexpected, that changes everything that you've just read, but at the same time everything that you've just read, even though like it changes in a really fun and unique way, all of these journeys are very personal, very just yeah, very personal, very deep, and at the same time just still a lot of fun. So yeah. That's Bleed Steam and Steel. I'll work on getting like a more condensed fun version.
A more condensed elevator pitch.
Yeah, a more condensed elevator pitch. So, I'd like to welcome you all to coming to the elevator today. Let me tell you about my book in the next 20 seconds. It's the book that you must read. Why? Because Asuka.
Period. Sold. Just show them that picture and be like, she's one of the main characters. That would get me to read it.
Yeah. No, say I fully intend on, because I also have artwork of Asuka just by herself. So I'll be sharing that artwork on social media as well as this. And as I get artwork for the other characters, I'll be sharing that as well, and just kind of get like the word of mouth ramped up for this book, because this is one, like, and I know I'm kind of taking up a lot of time right here, but hey, this is a book that I never expected to write.
And I'm so glad that you did, because it still is my favorite piece of fiction you have written so far.
I was gonna say, I think world building and character wise, it's got to be my favorite of yours.
Yeah, you just hit a really good balance with it, and so I'm excited to see it actually in print, and I'm excited to see this artwork attached to it, because yes,
yeah, like I almost don't want to put the title over it, because I'm just like, it's so beautiful, but the title's going to go over it, Bleed Steam and Steel. And I already know for the back part of the cover what I want. It's just going to be sweet and simple. It's just going to be basically like when you open up the book, when you actually get to the book, like when you actually get past like the all of the thanks and here's the copyright, yada yada yada, the foreword, the very first page. I'm basically going to take part of that and just tweak it a little bit, and that'll be the back. It's like, this is the story of the girl who risked it all to save her family. The story of the crippled spy who had to save his kingdom. The story of the priestess who found out her gods are real, and stuff like that. And just, boom, make that
beautiful.
The back.
I love it. I'm so excited. Anyway, back to watching...
Back to watching... Man, spooky
haunted maze.
Haunted maze with our girl Abigail.
She's afraid of spiders.
The hunt continues to
so you gotta get rid of that
romance
spider.
her. Although we've kind of already romanced, now the romance is continuing. Because romances don't end just because they kiss.
True.
Yes! Yes!
I have to get the mermaid pendant for her. But I'm too poor now, so that is next step. But first I need a drink.
That's the next step.
I just had spicy hummus.
Why is it spicy?
You know what? Actually, so while Camille's taking a drink and our character is sitting in the middle of a spooky maze, let me just quickly throw something out there as far as upcoming streams are concerned. So in October, based off of the schedule that we're going to be doing, we have 3 live streams that we intend to do. For the very first, which will be on October 1st, we're going to have Jed.
Yeah!
The one and only.
Jed. The one and only Mother Jed.
Do you think we could get like actual video? Like if we did a live stream with our faces, do you think we could get his face in it to prove that he exists?
Yeah.
That's a dangerous. Proposition.
I'm gonna be punished for bringing that up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wake up with no eyes.
We are
Yeah. It's a dangerous proposition.
We are risking everyone's lives.
Yeah. I'm here for the. I want that brisket though. I can tell you that much.
But yeah, so we're going to be doing a really awesome playthrough with Jed. for one of the games that he's developing, which there's a fun sweet story to it all. One of the things that Jed is really great at is being able to tell like a story in just real good concise terms, and then turning that into a game. So we're going to get to experience that live, which is going to be a ton of fun. His game Brimcaller, and then on the 15th, you are all invited to be a part of a choose your own horror story. So what that's going to be is we are going to basically do a type of dinner theater where we will be playing out, not like a game, but more like a book, where you guys, both me, like everyone here with me live, and also all of you in the chat, will get to do a choose your own adventure story that's Halloween themed. And this is going to be a really, really fun one. I've been working on it for a little bit already. You guys will be working to solve a triple homicide that no one can remember any of the clues for. 12 years ago, 3 people were brutally murdered. Many people were present, and yet no one knows how the murders were carried out. 12 years later, everyone who was present has begun to die horrible deaths. And one of the last survivors of that night has called together an illustrious group of people to try to solve the murder. So that's what we'll be doing on the 15th. And then for the 30th, or is it the 29th? 29th. Yeah, for the 29th, we're going to watch Catch Up Vampires.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. Quick question for you, Lars. Was that story idea at all inspired by the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle?
No spoilers.
In a way, so yeah, I'm not going to give any spoilers. In a way, yes.
Okay. Because it definitely has a bit of a flair to it.
Oh yeah, no, it definitely has a little bit of a flair, like the 7.5 Deaths, but the setting is somewhat similar. However, in this case, it's going to be way more supernatural than the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. And
are you talking about Catch Up Vampires, or are you talking about the Murder Mystery Dinner?
Murder Mystery Dinner.
Oh,
yes,
Murder Mystery Dinner.
So confused. I was like, this is
This is an interesting twist. Yeah, no, for those of you who don't know, the Catch Up Vampires is a Hungarian and German cartoon series about vegetarian vampires. And I swear it is the original Twilight story.
It's bonkers, y'all.
Like the main girl is Bella. And the Edward character is Pino, and he's basically Edward. Just minus like the power of I guess seeing into people's minds.
Does he sparkle in the moonlight? Actually, don't answer that. I want to find that out myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to experience this with a fresh pair of eyes, with virgin eyes. With ketchup virgin eyes.
Ketchup virgin eyes. So any of you who want to be who want to enjoy the Ketchup Vampires with the rest of us, I'm just going to say don't look it up ahead of time, so that way you can just enjoy the adventure, the hilarity. There are some spooky scenes. There are actually some legit spooky scenes, which are unfortunately ruined by the horrible dub.
Which makes it all better.
Yes. So that's my announcement. That's my announcement for Halloween, for the month of Halloween.
Yeah, and as always, if anybody is just now tuning in, this is recorded. So if you missed any of that, feel free to go back or just ask in the chat, and we can answer that. But yeah.
I completely forgot that we were doing the Brimcaller stuff with Jedward.
Oh, I'm excited.
Very excited.
I am too. That's going to be fun.
Pumped, because I miss my girl. Also, also for everyone else, do you guys, this is in regards to Nate and Scoot, do you guys have your characters for Lars's mystery dinner?
I don't actually. Lars, let's get together after this live stream.
Yeah, so I'll help you guys out with that. And also, this goes for others, at least who are part of our Discord community. So those who are on who are part of our Discord community, you can actually also sign up to be one of the characters for the 15th. So that would mean that you can actually join us live, not just in the chat, but speaking. You'll get a chance to speak on the air and be able to voice your insights and choices live.
Hell yeah.
Beaut. Well, let's
excited.
Yeah, let's actually get to the topic on hand after, what has it been, 20 minutes now?
Sure. One of them.
Yeah. But those are some fun 20 minutes, at least for me, because I got to talk about Asuka and
That's true.
Steven Steele.
Oh, remind me, Lars, to ask you a question about Asuka afterwards.
Okay. All right.
Otherwise, I will forget. Asuka. Yes. It's up to you to remember, because I won't. Ooh.
Okay.
Penis plants.
Ooh.
Okay. Lars, would you like to introduce...
Did you catch what I said?
Yeah. Would you like to introduce the topic?
Okay.
It's not about phallic plants, I promise. That's not what we're here to talk about today. But unfortunately... I would love to talk about phallic plants any day of the week, but
any day,
that day is not today.
But today. So, what we're going to be talking about today is we are going to get on the struggle bus, because we've all been there, and it's something that we should all talk about. We're going to talk about kind of two things in particular. One of which is, what is something that when we started writing, we really, really had a hard time with. And then the second thing is going to be, what are some scenes or something that we're trying to write that it's just not working out for like whatever reason. And like it'll just kind of be a chance to be like, yeah, why isn't this working out? So, go from there.
Yeah. I think before we tackle that, War Striker just put in the chat, they said, how do you write good comic relief that isn't repetitive?
Oh, that is an excellent question.
Yeah. I think really it comes down to, at least, I don't know, I've never really had the problem where my comedic relief sounds repetitive, mostly because I usually do it in the form of banter. That's usually the way that my comedic relief kind of comes through, but that's just because I love, throwing two characters into a situation and see, how they talk to each other about it. And so...
Yeah.
Ooh, a fish!
Really, like, for me, that comedic relief just comes from the fact, like, okay, it's kind of stressful, like, we need to relax, let's put these two characters together and just let them talk.
Yeah. I think it's helpful to know your characters then.
Yeah.
Like, if you want comic relief there, then be more familiar with your character, spend time with them so you can get a sense of what their sense of humor is.
Yeah. And I also think that, like, in your first draft, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Like, I feel like that is, especially me and most other novice writers I've talked to, we worry too much about our first draft. And our first draft isn't going to be, like, at all coherent until we finish the story and then we rewrite the entire story again. It's like, it doesn't matter how much actual like planning you put into it before you start, the first half of your story is probably going to need to be rewritten anyway. And so
you're always going to look at your first draft and be like, wow, who wrote this, and are they an idiot?
Yeah, exactly. And so it's like, I think
actually dumb.
Writing good comedic relief, I think, kind of falls into that as well, where it's like, practice makes perfect. So just keep trying to put in fun interactions, put in funny moments.
I think another thing to stop it from becoming repetitive is you have to look at what's happening in the moment and have it tie into that.
Yeah.
You can't just like, oh, do the same joke over and over and over again, or the same like dumb little like slapstick play. You can pull it off like once or twice, but like the biggest still there if it's actually going to be comedic is if it pertains to what's actually happening in the story at that time.
Yeah, I love what he says here, where first drafts are just your hands having spasms and putting words on a page, which is exactly accurate. Yeah, I feel like what you said, Scott, is very, very accurate. Where it's like if your comedic relief is like, oh, this situation is, kind of heavy, we need to have a laugh, so let's talk about something that happened a while ago, or let's bring up, the same joke that we've said multiple times. It's like, number one, the novelty will wear off. If you keep doing the same if you keep going for the same, like, joke, so to speak. But number two, I think I've lost my train of thought.
Uh-oh.
Well, I'm going to say something right here. There are some people though who do want to have like a surety that one character will be that kind of a joke. And like we've talked about this before about like don't flanderize your characters, and we've talked about like how Nathan and I aren't really big fans of Lopin, or at least how Lopin has become as a character in the Stormlight Archive, where he just seems to always be the butt of the joke, and intentionally so. And like there are some people who do like who want that. However, they want a consistently funny character.
Yeah.
And so like I don't think that I'm skilled enough to say how you could pull that off without it just being repetitious to the point that it's no longer funny. But one of the things that like I can say is that when you look at the Harry Potter movies, especially one of the things that like immediately made people like always laugh was that they had Seamus Finnegan always blow something up. They would normally blow up in his face. And it was a joke that was made more for the movies than it was for the books. It only happens once in the books.
Right.
But it's something that they put into nearly every movie. Seamus almost always has something blow up in his face, except for movies 3 and 4. And I remembered that when we then went back to watch the 5th movie and Seamus blows something up again, the entire audience burst out laughing. Because that's what we wanted to see. Yeah. And so, like, you can have a joke. I feel it's more like not that the character repeats, like, is always doing the same routine, but that there's a certain joke that if you know it lands right, you can use it again and again for that character in the right moment. In the right moment.
There's still a time and place, and like you don't want to beat a dead horse.
I think Seamus though wasn't he one of the ones that was like very against Harry in the 3rd and 4th books?
He was against Harry in the 4th and in the 4th and 5th book.
5th books. Oh, okay.
I think I finally
my thought was
I finally remembered my train of thought. It was that using the context around you is far more important. And so it's like if you have a a joke that you want to repeat and you want it to land, use the context around you to change that joke. Like the punchline can be the same, but the setup can be different. Or alternatively, the setup can be the same, but the punchline can be different based on what's happening around you. Or around your characters. And so have some fun with it. See what kind of spins you could do. Honestly, I think maybe I shouldn't recommend this, but I'm going to recommend it anyway. Bakemonogatari does this like.
I knew we were going.
I'm sorry, like I wasn't going to.
See, this is consistent.
Yeah,
this is consistent tomfoolery.
Yeah, I wasn't going to because I have a hard time recommending that show to anybody. We don't need to get into that.
Because of shenanigans.
Because there's a lot of red flags in it. Yeah, but the shenanigans are also like comedically well timed when they're not problematic. And so it's like, if you want to know, like, if you want to see good, repetitious, like, gags and ongoing jokes, that is a great example of what you can kind of do. And I think that, honestly, just character interactions in general, that is what Nisio Isin in Bakemonogatari just nailed so perfectly. And so, at the very least, it's a great character study. Even if the rest of the show is sometimes very hard to pay attention because of just anyway,
balls to the walls.
It's balls to the wall. Fast. Yeah, it's very, very passionate. I'll say that. Like, there's way too much personality in that show. But it's a great example of kind of, what you can do with comedic effect. Anyway, struggle bus time?
Well, hold on.
You go for it.
I was going to say, because everyone's like, your own sense of humor is your own thing. So I would just say, like, if there's a certain type of comedy that you're wanting to get across, I would look up authors or writers, like screenwriters, etc., that they show that type of comedy that you like, and see if they have anything to say, or study what they do to help kind of, because it's like, we could talk here all day, but at the end of the day, like, we're still figuring out our own shit.
Yeah.
And it all varies, so I think the best advice I could give is, like, find something that you like that has the type of humor that you like, and see what advice they can give, or like read or watch it for yourself to get a better idea of like comedic timing and type of comedy that you're wanting to go for.
And I would say not to force it.
Yeah.
Because forced humor always comes off flat. And so it's like,
you're so chubby.
It's just one of those things that you kind of have to intuitively pick up. And that kind of, is a bit of an out to say, it's kind of, And
I think it's something that you should always be aware that it could keep, like, always write comedy with the mindset that it may not stick around, you know, because you could always come back to it and be like, wow, that joke actually falls really, really flat. Like, I feel like it's one of the biggest darlings that you end up killing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I ran into that with Monarch Mercenaries. When I wrote the first draft, I tried to make the main character really funny. And I chuckled at the time, but as Sports Striker said, it's like, your hand's just spasming and stuff happens. When I went back and looked at it again, it was just an utter mess. It was no longer funny to me, and so I rewrote that entire book. And yeah, it's about a lot of humor, unless you're like setting up like a knock joke or something like that. Or setting up like bathroom humor, which can be fun to write and everything. And usually the humor is all based in how your character interacts with others, and that was where I ended up having the most fun. Was what was in those interactions. So really, once again, I can just only confirm what Nathan and Camille have already said. It comes down to knowing your characters and playing around with their interactions, and sometimes that means you're just going to be writing a lot of stuff. And it might not even go into your book, but it helps you to
It sucks to say it, but
their banter.
It sucks to say, but really the best thing you can do is just write more. Just get the practice. Yeah. Writing is a skill that you hone.
Write more.
It's just like anything else. The more you practice it, the better you get, and it's a skill that you have to hone over time, like hours of practice. It, like anything else you create, you just have to continuously try, keep going at it.
On.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what was that? A winter mystery.
A winter mystery. So,
a winter mystery.
Lars, tell me, what is one of the biggest struggles you had when you were first starting to write?
Oh boy. One of the biggest struggles, and I'll admit it's still something that I sometimes run to a brick wall with, is paragraphs.
Yeah. And honestly, I would say that just typography and paragraph structure in general is one of the most consistently, like when I read something on fanfiction.net or when I read things by other novice writers, that is usually the thing that I notice is lacking the most, like in which the authors struggle with.
Right.
And so continue.
Yes. One of the big reasons for this is that so when I started like sitting down to actually really write a story to write my own fantasy books, I'm in the middle of my graduate program, and hold on a sec here. Can you guys hear that?
Yeah, is it ringing? Is there ringing?
I hear.
Yeah,
it's not super clear, so you should be okay.
No, it's quiet.
Say I am. I'm just. Oh, that's so annoying. It's one of the problems with having a landline. You get bad calls at night. But you know what that landline though is going to save me when the aliens land.
For our younger listeners, a landline is a telephone on the wall.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a telephone that you connect with a cord to an actual wall outlet.
I have fun tangent really quick. Yeah. So my apartment was originally built in like the 50s, and so when I was like checking it out and everything, I noticed this in a lot of old apartments in Salt Lake. There is this like cubby in the wall that I've seen in like a bunch of apartments I was looking at, and every time I would look at it, it looks like a little shrine. Like it's just like this little like teeny tiny alcove randomly placed in a wall. And I was like, this is so weird. Like, why are these here randomly in old apartments? And I couldn't figure it out. And when I looked at the apartment I live in now, present tense, my sister and I, both being millennials, were like, I don't get it. But then when I was moving my stuff in and my mom came up to Utah and she saw it and she's like, oh, that's where a landline used to go. There's like a little box that the landline thing plugged in, and you would like put your phone before like your phone was like attached to the wall and you had like, a phone set, it would sit in those little alcoves. Oh. So I learned two things that day. One, I'm an idiot, and two, that's where you put old phones. So the more you know.
Yeah. Wow.
The more
that's
you
like
know.
I feel like you see those like things online where it's like, oh, you can tell you're old if you do your fingers this way when you're pantomiming a cell phone call or whatever, or you're young if you do it, flat-handed. I feel like that's I feel like that, like I'm a young child.
Right, or when someone's like, hang up the phone, it's like, when you think about that saying, it's like, why do we say hang up the phone?
Because you're literally hanging it up. Yeah.
Exactly. We're getting distracted.
We are.
We totally are.
That's part of the fun. Anyway, so back to paragraphing. I think...
So back to paragraphs. Well, I'm going to say exactly what my problem is, because it's something that I think, or at least what my problem was, because I think it's something that is a common occurrence, is that my writing was very structured and formulaic, because I'm in the middle of my graduate program. Right. I have been writing and I did a double major for my undergrad, so I've been doing already a ton of academic writing, and academic writing has certain expectations, certain styles, and everything like that. So my fantasy writing was like reading an academic paper.
Yeah.
Big paragraphs.
Yeah. Very much.
I remember that.
And there's so much thrown into that paragraph that it becomes convoluted. Academically speaking and formulaically speaking, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Is it fun to read? No. So I had to learn to become loosey-goosey. And it's something that Scott actually put here into the chat, is that paragraphs are basically almost like short, like self-contained stories or ideas. So you can have a paragraph that's one sentence. You can have a paragraph that's one word, but it has to work also within the rest of the page.
Yeah.
And that's something that took me a very long time to figure out, an embarrassing amount of time to figure out. And you can actually still see the remnants of my earlier writing style in Knights of Halicruz. I did my best to try to fix up Knights of Halicruz, but I'll be honest, there's still some places where I'm like, oh yeah, I could have done that better.
Yeah. I think that you should always err on the side of paragraphs being too short. That's my honest opinion.
That's kind of what I go for.
Yeah, because it's like the way when you're reading a book, the way the paragraphs are broken up has a specific flow to it, and that can really change the feel of it. You, regardless of what the words actually say, like the way you break up the action, the way you break up what is happening has a significant impact on how that is portrayed. I'm sorry to do this again, but Bakemonogatari, if you ever read the books, man, like this is where I learned it all from. Like, there's literally like pages where it's literally just one word at a time, like for an entire like one word paragraphs all the way down the page, and that has so much more impact. You know, use it sparingly, obviously, but it's like that has a lot of impact. You're like, wow, this is like, you know. And so it's like, the way I kind of think about it is you basically have two sides to... So, okay. My biggest problem was grammar, and it still is, you know. But I feel like typography and grammar are kind of two sides of the same coin, where you have... Grammar is the, like, construction of the individual sentences and making it flow and feel good. But then you have typography and paragraphing, which is the structure of the entire paragraph and how that feels. Another thing I highly recommend, do some poetry. Like, poetry teaches you how to use the enter bar effectively. And that's all it is.
Yeah, poetry can teach you some really good skills. I think getting into poetry and like writing short stories is a really good idea, because it teaches you how to really condense what you're saying, like really make the words that you're
like every word matters.
Every word matters, and so you have to like make it work. So you're not writing a story that's 100,000 words long. You need to put it back down into something that's more like 10,000. And you got to make every word count in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that author... it's a... Go ahead.
I was going to say, who was the author that, in writing his story, he said... Oh, it was Neil Gaiman. I can't remember which book, but in one of his books, he's like, I did not... Like, every single word that I put into this book was very, like...
Deliberate?
Very deliberate. Like, I did not put any word in this book that is not supposed to be there. I can't remember if it was, gosh, I think Spencer would know. It may have been, I'll have to Google it. I remember reading that a few weeks. Hey, do you mind, sir? Sorry if you can hear Zaz scratching his cat tree. Rude.
Rude. How dare he be a cat?
Yeah, how dare he? But yeah, I feel like Neil Gaiman's quote is a good example of that.
Yeah.
Also, I love him.
Yeah, and I like what... So to address what War Striker says, they say, my biggest problem is not planning. I just have an idea and start writing, then stuff ends up being left behind. That's perfectly fine, you know?
Yeah.
It'd
be like that.
Yeah, and especially if you've done some more, like, poetry stuff, then the words that you just end up writing end up being, like, profound in some form or fashion. And so it's like, you know, just getting in practice, getting in what you need to get out, and then going back and fixing it later. And that's, you know, I've been rewriting a major chunk of my book because the first time through, I did that exact thing. And so it's like,
right.
Don't, get the broad strokes out and go back and start actually doing some wordsmithing,
Yeah.
Like you don't, you don't like, when, to use the word smithing a little bit more literally, when you pull out a blank piece of metal, you don't instantly hit it a few times and it's a sword. It's not a perfectly crafted sword right off the bat. It takes time. You have to reheat it, take it out, mold it, reheat it, or not mold it, but smush it. I'm not a smith. I don't know the words. And so it takes a lot of time.
Smush. I will smush you this sword.
Yeah. Oh, and I love what Cyberwolfright says here about run-on sentences and how they have a certain feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously, run-on sentences are frowned upon because they're grammatically incorrect, right?
Right. But I've seen some very good stylized run-on sentences.
Exactly.
Like, if you think about, like, Lemony Snicket, or even, again, Neil Gaiman, like, has some hilarious run-on sentences that work so well because they're very stylized.
Yeah,
they're clearly not someone who is inexperienced and doesn't know how.
Yeah, or what Cyberwolf says, Tony Stark. Perfect example. And so it's like you have to understand the rules before you can break them. You have to understand why the rules exist in the first place, and then you can break them. My big problem.
A great example.
Huh?
War Striker put in the chat is like Lemony Snicket, confused that living hell out of him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Lemony Snicket's a great example for that.
It really is. And it's like
Lemony Snicket is an agent of chaos.
It's like my biggest problem was that I was trying when I first started writing, I was trying to break the rules of grammar before I even learned them. And it's like,
who are you, Jed?
Yeah, exactly. Jed, are you still here?
Jed was breaking all the rules of grammar.
Yeah, and so it's like you should understand, and breaking the rules of grammar should be a little bit more sparingly as well, because it's like if you do it all over the place, then it's like, okay, obviously this person doesn't know what grammar is. But if you do it in rare instances, you're like, wow, that really hits different. I have a scene in which one of my characters is talking about, and this is actually not even canon, it's just something I wrote on the side, but I have a scene where one of my characters is talking about how she's been going to this school, and it's a very difficult school, and she's really nervous about all of these things, and if she doesn't get a good grade, then she'll be kicked out, and if she gets kicked out, and blah, 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 and she just goes on and on and on for this. Honestly, it's one of the longest paragraphs I've written, and it's all one sentence, because it's just everything she's worried about, and it's just like, that builds so much anxiety because there's not a single break in it, and so you read it all as one sentence, and you're like, oh my gosh, and then you finally hit it, and it's like, oh, a breath. And so it's like, that's something that I had to learn, that I have to learn grammar if I want to be able to have something hit that well.
Right. Yeah, then it's a deliberate choice.
Exactly.
Running.
What kind of things did you struggle with, Camille, do you feel?
Oh, gosh.
Throwing you under the bus. The struggle bus.
When Lars posted this early, why do I keep missing this right after it closes? When Lars posted these questions earlier, I was like, shoot, I feel like there are a lot of things, but again, like object permanence is a concept I struggle with, and I was like, I know that there are things, but I can't think of them. But when we were talking, I did think of a couple. I think one is like writing physical comedy is something that is still, I think that's really hard to pull off. Like I feel like
more slapstick.
Like writing banter is super fun. I love doing that. But I feel like when you're writing physical comedy, that's a tough thing to get across now that I think about it, I'm like, I don't really know if I don't go out of my way to include it because I don't feel like it is a strength of mine. And then on the flip side of Lars talking about paragraphs, I feel like one of my struggles was the opposite of that, because while I wrote academic papers for mostly history stuff in college, but my major was advertising. And so it was very like short, snappy, um, very like creative driven writing, And so trying to do that in a like it's very different. Like it really opens your eyes to how many different types of writing styles there are, because I was like, oh, this should be a breeze, because technically it's both creative writing, you know what I mean? But that was still tough because I was very used to I am very much a you write something short and sweet to get the point across. And so I had to learn slash still am learning to take the time to it's okay to draw things out and like paint a picture with your words rather than something catchy and short type of thing. So I think that was one of my biggest ones.
Yeah, and I think that that's actually something that I also struggle with. More so just that I feel like I pick and choose what to describe incorrectly. You know what I mean? It's like some things I'll just rush through the explanation, but other things like I'll take a long meandering path, and it's like I need to figure out like where's the balance, like what things do I need to go more in depth with, and what things do I need to go less in depth with. Like I was reading through actually a chapter I just wrote just a few days ago, and I was like, wow, I spent 2 paragraphs just explaining the surrounding area, or not 2 paragraphs, 2 sentences explaining what the area around them looks like, but then I spent 4 paragraphs explaining the sword, like
and for what?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, why? I mean, yes, this sword is an important part of my story, but it's not that important. You know what I mean? And when I was reading it, I was like, okay, this feels super out of place, where it's just like, hey, here's way too much detail about what this sword looks like. It's like, okay, that's a little weird. And so it's just one of those things. Balance. Yeah, you need to find the balance. And honestly, reading it out loud, having other people read it, all of that's going to help you kind of find that stuff. Those places.
I think I just thought of another one. This was actually the first one that I thought of, and then I completely forgot. But I remembered again. One of the things that I still to this day struggle with is like transition scenes. Like a scene that's not. It's not like a super important conversation. It's not an action thing. It's not like really intriguing dialogue. It's just like those quote unquote boring. Don't you dare! I will fight you. Yeah, like it's a scene that's necessary to get from point A to point B, but they're just a pain in the ass to write. Dude, I struggle with those still, because it's like I don't want to be here, but you don't want to like it's like you want to move on to something more exciting, but it's still important to write that scene, and you also want to make sure that the readers reading it can't tell that you don't want to be writing that scene, you know what I mean? It's like, yes, you writing it don't want to be writing it, but the person reading it shouldn't know that. I think that's something I still struggle with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's...
I like something right here. Cyberwolf writes, a good balance between descriptions and events is a difficult thing to handle. Yeah. Transition scenes are so difficult.
They really are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that
I'm actually...
Sorry, I'll go ahead and... That's something that I, in the past, have struggled with, and I still do. More so just, like, having the energy to write these. But in the past, I would just completely not put them in the story, just because, like, I don't want to write this, so I'm not going to. But then, all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're here on this island. Now we're, on the mainland, halfway across the world. What in the world? Like... there has to be at least something that kind of gives you context, to kind of be like, okay, this is what's happening. Yeah. This is where we've been. And so, yeah, it's...
I'll say... Yeah. I'll say this: when it comes to transitions, it really does come down a lot to, for me, to how far a character is going. So like for instance, if it's going to be that like a character, is like there's going to be a journey of some kind, unless I have something planned along the journey that they're supposed to do, like talk with someone else, like if I'm trying to develop relationships, whether those be friendships, family, or romance, then I might want to spend some time with them on the road because it's the road trip that actually tells you a lot about that relationship. Yeah. Not like the destination, it's the trip. But if it's just like, okay, we have to march the army from this place to this place, unless I plan for like an ambush or something like that, then it's just that then I open up that chapter wherever they've gotten there with just like a brief description of the journey.
Yeah.
Or they talk about the journey as like they're moving and doing stuff. So I make the transition something that is more interactive. That's what I like to do, and to me at least, this is my style. That feels like a little bit more realistic, and then it allows the story to keep a good pace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Scott, do you have anything that you feel like you've struggled with?
One sec, I've got licorice in my mouth.
Oh. Okay, well, while you're eating your licorice, I want to tackle, actually, War Striker's comment. Their question, I'm not sure what you identify as, so I'll just do them. Anyway, so how do you introduce two characters together and eventually have them become a romance? You
like,
do?
Can I say something?
Introducing them separately?
Question? Yeah, I guess that's a good question.
So, yeah, I'm gonna say this. In your book, like this is something that I see a lot in visual media, in movies and shows and cartoons, where when a character is introduced, it's usually that they're introduced in such a way as to wink and nod. This is a future love interest.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, we know this is a future. Yeah, this is a future love interest. We're gonna build up to that. The only time that I've seen something like that pulled off in fiction is in The Wheel of Time when Rand meets Min. And that's because it's such a contrived situation.
Yeah.
It's so utterly ridiculous. It's meant to be ridiculous because Min's power is so strange and OP. Where she's just like, oh yeah, like you're gonna love 3 women. And you're just like, and you're one of those women, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like that, and I'll say this: that scene only then works actually because when you get to know Min, she's fantastic.
Yeah, Min is awesome.
Like she's such a strong character without the romance that it just makes the romance better. And so when you introduce a character, you want the character to be themselves. Yeah. They are not their romantic partner. They are not what they bring to a romance. They are themselves.
Exactly.
And if you write it that way,
repeat the question, please.
Ooh.
Once you're done, Lars.
Yeah, I'll read it again because I'm pretty much done right there. It was, how do you introduce two characters together and eventually have them become a romance? So I'm guessing then, like, we're talking about
each other.
Yeah, like I almost feel like I'm almost wondering if this is a question about a meet cute.
Yeah.
Like how do you write the meet cute? Smush,
I will say this. Don't do what Jed said. He said smush smush sword. Unless never mind. I have done that. But anyway.
Unless is the sword part of the smoosh smoosh? Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, but it's like
children around.
What
about NASCAR?
I personally, and this is really more of a personal thing, I mean, there are ways to make this work really well, but when two characters kind of like first meet, it's a lot of the times you kind of see like this kind of awkwardness between the two of them where they're just like yeah, huh, hi, hi, haha, yeah, uh-huh. You know, and they're not saying anything. Like, there's nothing coherent being said between the two of them. And it's like, I don't like those kind of like romantic introductions because it's like in real life, if you talk to people, and in my own experience, a lot of the times, it's like, oh, we hit it off right away. We just started talking and and we just enjoyed each other's company and it went from there. And, and I think that in most instances, that's the correct way to go. It's like, put these characters together and have them enjoy each other. Like,
Right. I think it depends, though. I have thoughts. I think it depends on what kind of relationship you're trying to set up, because if you look at different tropes, you have to consider, like, is this a friend to lovers type of thing?
Yeah.
I guess that's different because you're not really introducing them most of the time when you're doing that trope. They already know each other, regardless. Or like enemies to lovers, co-workers to you know what I mean? Like, I, for one, am a slut for enemies to lovers when it's done correctly. And so I have written a lot of stories where
done correctly.
Yeah, like I've written a lot of stories where it start off as like enemies to lovers, and like enemies does not mean that they're like trying to actively kill each other.
Yeah.
I see that more as like there is this initial misunderstanding between the two of them.
Like Lily and Paven.
Exactly. And so it's like, and so you kind of get off on the wrong foot, but even when there's that misunderstanding there, like there's still like that initial like spark and dynamic between the two, chemistry. So yeah, so I guess it kind of depends on what you're trying to, like, how you're going about this meet cute, because some meet cutes are not always cute,
Yeah. And I think
I feel like with
go ahead, Scott.
Okay. I feel like with specifically like enemies to lovers, it's the emotions run high throughout the entire story. They just shift sometime in the middle of it, usually right near the climax.
That's a great way to look at it.
You've got a lot of hate, and that shifts to love, but you're like keeping that tension going through the entire way, even though there is an obvious shift in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it depends. I think that even that depends, because I think it goes from, if you're doing like a full-on enemies to lover, I feel like this could be its own conversation, frankly. Like, you could do it in a way where it's like they shift from enemies to kind of like a neutral understanding between each other, and then that shifts more towards like from neutral to more like positive, endearing attitudes towards each other, and then that shifts into, oh no, we got fifis for each other, so I feel like it's a lot of times it's not just like one flip-flop to the other, unless you're just going strictly horny based, then it probably would be a big shift that way.
Yeah. Well, and I think like to kind of break down how I've done this in the past, not saying that this is like the de facto way or even that it's good, but this is, just the relationship that I have written that I am very fond of is, like I said earlier, Lily and Paven. Basically, when they're introduced, like, Paven is the prince of this thing, and Lily immediately thinks like, oh, he's probably stuck up, he's probably very arrogant because he's a prince, and that's not the case. And there's a few things that kind of happen to like encourage that view of Paven. But the important thing is that Paven never actually is like immediately like doing anything bad. You know what I mean? It's like all of her perceived view of Paven is totally wrong and skewed. And so it's like when you do finally, when she stops and actually meets the person she's so aggressively, against, she realizes, oh, this is not the same person I thought he was. He's completely different. And that's when you have the tonal shift, where it's like, it's not like, oh, I'm a terrible bad boy, but now that I've met you, I'm a good boy. That kind of thing doesn't work out. Twilight.
My bad boy.
Yeah. Did I say that? No, I'm just kidding.
And not just Twilight. There's so many cringy stories that attempt to do that, and it's just.
Oh yeah, no, it's.
I hate it because when I see it in real life, it never works out.
Yeah. Right. It's definitely a very much like a. Well, it's a very like fantasy based type. Fantasy is not the word I'm looking for, but it's a very like
it is fantasy. It's
right, but not like
it's a self-fulfillment wish.
Yeah,
is what it wants because and honestly because like deep down we all want to have at least like one special person, and or we wish that we could be that person that could change someone else, or that someone needs us in their lives. And the thing is that you actually already have a lot of people who actively want you in their lives. It's just that we crave that overly romanticized version of that. And the thing is like it's not bad to be wanted. It's just that unfortunately that trope leads to some pretty bad decisions in real life, and normally leads to some pretty cringy writing. It can be done. There are some moments where it has been done right, but those are few and far in between.
Yeah, I
exactly.
It's hard to write that.
I just saw what Jed wrote.
I know. I would also like to clarify that my truth comment, is not in regards to 50 Shades of Grey.
I think it works though. I mean, yes.
It ain't 50 Shades of Grey. Is it even a relationship?
You know what?
This is why we keep you around, Rob. Thank you.
I just love so Pride and Praven by Nate Austin. That will be the fanfic. Me. That will be the fanfic when your story is published.
That would be really cool. Well, now it must be done.
Yeah.
Jed manifested it.
Yep. Now,
and what Cyberwolf writes is very true. We have this. Back when I worked at Barnes & Noble, we called the romance section the fantasies. That's more fantastical than the actual fantasy section.
Right.
Like, let's be honest here.
Well, and here's the thing, though. It's like that's why I prefer to like romance is not my go-to genre of choice. I would rather read something in a different genre with a romance subplot, because I find those written romances are always more realistic and enjoyable than because let's be real, romance it's just to get your jollies, get your and that's fine, but it's not realistic.
I almost said something very inappropriate. I'm glad I stopped myself.
You better not.
No, you're absolutely right. It's like the point of the quote-unquote romance books is not to tell a good romance. It's to get people sexually excited.
Right.
That being said, the best romance books are the books that are aware of what it is and what it's trying to do. So, the more ridiculous the title of a romance, the better the book. And I stand by that. Like, how to flirt with that.
Though? Because we did read... Because we did read Kissing Corona.
The first one was great. The second one was a little too far.
That one is very deliberately taking the piss out of romance, though.
Yeah.
That one's very much a
yeah. I think after her divorce, things went downhill.
Yeah. And her 40 ferrets. I don't want to know what she does with those ferrets.
Any case.
But that's neither here nor there.
Get hardwood.
Excuse me?
Uh,
what was that, Camille?
In relation to our current conversation.
Yeah,
what?
Something about hardwood?
I need more hardwood.
Good to know.
So no eucalyptus for you?
Yeah.
No.
But...
No.
Regardless, we've gotten off track. Scott, to finish us off, what's something that you have struggled with?
Nate?
I think the thing that I struggle the most with, and it ends up leading to really long tracks of writer's block, is just staying staying enthused, staying excited by the stories I'm writing.
Yeah.
Kind of idea. I'll get really excited about it for a while, and I'm like, oh, I gotta write it down, and then I'll write down like 20,000 words in whatever project, and then just kind of.
This is very painfully relatable.
Yeah, I just kind of lose my drive, and then like not write anything for like a month and a half, and then when I get back to it, like, oh, where was I, and like, how do I get excited about the same project again? Meanwhile, I get ideas for something else, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna start writing this for a little bit and see where it goes. And I've got,
and that's how you end up with the quadrillion
60
stories.
Yeah, I've got a good like 60, 70 stories on my Google Drive that's just hasn't gone anywhere. I haven't finished any of them. I haven't done anything with them. But there's like 20,000 words in each of them.
Right.
Yeah.
And like they just kind of dead end.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that is almost like just a persistent issue.
Yeah.
For me, definitely, but for a lot of writers, I feel like that's something that everyone can kind of relate to.
Yeah, because it's very. I feel like for me, it's definitely like a hyperfixation type thing, where it's like, oh, this caught my interest, and now this is all I'm going to be thinking about and doing and focusing on for the next X amount of time, and then you get burnout from it until something else gets your fixation. And ADHD is a bitch, but like that's
welcome
just
to
the
my
way
life.
Yeah, and it's just a vicious cycle.
Yeah,
I have no solution. That's a big struggle.
But I will say,
I think it's just a constant struggle. But like, as long as you're trying, I think that's what matters.
Self-awareness is the first step to recovery, right?
Exactly. I think that because I struggle a lot with starting a project, getting a portion of the way through, and then either moving on to something else that seems even more exciting, or getting bored and whatever it might be. But there's something so insanely gratifying about finishing a novel.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
yes,
I still remember vividly where I was, what I was doing when I finished my first draft of Black Wings. And granted, there was a lot that I ended up skipping because it's like, I need to know where this story is going before I can write this chapter, and
but like
such and such. But but I wrote 150,000 words.
You did that, bitch.
I did that. It took me 5 years to do it. Yeah, but I did it.
You did that.
And it's like, I never would have thought, especially since I struggle with reading, I struggle with writing, because I'm dyslexic, I'm ADHD, like, that's a terrible combination for a writer to have. But it's like, I still did it. I persevered, I worked through it, and I focused on one book and wrote. And there were so many other books that I wanted to write in the meantime, but I set those to the side. I forced myself not to. And I still, I still can't believe that I managed to do that. Granted, the book is nowhere near close to being publishable or finished or anything like that. Right. But still, the fact that I was able to complete something like that just changed. Like, something in me was just like, wow, I can actually do this. And so, give it a shot. Finish something. Because you deserve it. Nobody else needs to know it even exists. But you deserve it.
Do it for yourself.
Do it for yourself. Do it for the vine.
Ooh, what a reference.
What a reference. What a deep cut.
Wow, that shit hurted.
Oh my gosh. There's one thing that I also wanted to share about, like, the scenes or the things that you have a hard time finishing.
Yeah.
Because like, I feel like there's something that we can actually, like, get into when it actually, like, comes to, like, this is a scene that, like, I have such a hard time writing, or this is something I have such a hard time writing. There's two projects of mine that have been on the shelf for a long time, and I've legitimately thought about them, like, so much. Like, I've got notes, I've got plans, I've I've even acted out scenes with my by myself in a car for hours. So I'm going along like, so like this isn't just something like that's simply there on the back burner. But I for one of them is a story that I started on Royal Roads and only got like 2 chapters in. Misadventures. And it's one that I totally intend to one day finish. It's not just like, okay, I tried writing it and yeah, it didn't work and whatnot.
Yeah.
But it's a story about a mage mouse, that all of his spells are just, for whatever reason, end up going horribly wrong. And so everyone in his community despises him because he's just such a horrible mage. And this little mouse community down in a sewer world, it's a world in the sewers, is besieged by a bunch of stray dogs. And the dogs actually like the mouse because they find the mouse incredibly entertaining. The mice don't like being in the position that they're in, and so they're like, we must free ourselves from these dogs. Dogs, so like, it's weird because the only mouse that's get along with the dogs is the mage mouse, who's a horrible mage, so it just makes it even worse. Like, everyone just hates this mouse. Mm-hmm. And he desperately wants to be accepted. He's in love with the mayor's daughter and everything like that. So when he finds out that there's going to be a quest to somehow find a way to get rid of these dogs, he goes on his own quest to try to prove himself, and falls in with a cat that's a knight, as well as a bunch of pirates who are rats, and a shrew who's going insane. Just all of these, there's like all these different characters, and so like when he comes back to help free the village, like everyone's like, you did it all wrong. Like, how could you go so wrong? Because like he just has this ragtag team with him, and the other mice come back with like an army of mice, and it's just like, oh. Yeah. There's a lot of irony that I want to play with, and maybe that's the thing, is that like I love irony, but maybe I'm not that good of an ironic writer, and maybe that's one of the things that makes it so hard to write misadventures, is because I can see it so clearly in my mind. As I said, I've even acted out scenes, but writing the irony of just this character who's trying to be a hero but fails constantly.
Yeah.
That's something new to me, and so that's one of the things I think that makes it so hard for me to write it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think, kind of going back to what Cyberwolf has been saying about how, there's, scenes that they want to write but struggle to get through it. I actually ran into this exact same problem. I mean, I run into it all the time, but like worse than normal, I ran into it recently. And what I'm trying this out still. So I can't necessarily say that this unequivocally works for me or for anybody out there. Is a few months ago, Camille actually posted something on our group Discord, or on the Camille's Harem Discord, about ADHD, the ADHD approach of writing, right? Like a tips and tricks for ADHD writers. And basically it's just kind of said, like, instead of writing the start of the scene to the end of the scene, write like a rough outline that takes you maybe 5-10 minutes to write. Go back in and write and expand for it more. And then go back in and expand to it more. And so it's like you write the scene and it's done. And you kind of get that, that excitement where it's like, I wrote the scene. But then you go in and you expand it and you're like, yeah, now I'm done.
It's like this constant little like dopamine kick. I'm really glad that you read it because I still haven't yet.
Yeah, and so I've been trying it out.
Extremely true to brand.
Yeah. No, I literally I'm going to save this for later. So I pinned it and then didn't read it for like 3 weeks. I was like, I should go read that because it might be interesting. But I read that. I was like, I'm going to try this out on this scene that I'm really struggling with. Mm-hmm. And so far, it's kind of working, in the sense of, I feel like I actually was able to get the scene out, which is a huge leg up because I was not enjoying it. I was not feeling any motivation to write it. And I was able to finish the scene, quote fingers, finish. And now I haven't really had all that much time to go back and, expand on it more because I just started my job. and there's a whole huge learning curve behind that, and I don't need to get into it. But I will return and report and tell you guys how it goes, because it's so
that might
far
be a good way to tackle transition scenes too.
Exactly. Well, and that's exactly what this scene is it's a transition scene. And so it's like, I don't want to write this. I don't really have any desire to write this. Yes, I love the characters and I love the character interactions in this scene, but that's it. Like, there's nothing else really all that profound except for some, like, world building opportunities. And so, anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
10 out of 10.
So,
yeah. Dang it.
Well, is there anything else you guys want to touch on before we close out?
Mate, Camille, did you want to ask the question about Asuka right now, or?
Oh, I mean, it's not really
for later still.
It's not really related to live streaming.
Well, before we close out, I do want to say, if you joined in halfway through, highly recommend going and checking out the beginning of this live stream, because Lars had some awesome, exciting things, and both announcements and cool artwork that we got from his stories from an artist. And so go check those out, because that was super, super cool.
Amazing, incredible, breathtaking,
Asuka,
etc., etc. The bestest girl.
Best girl.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll post a picture of her over at our Discord as well. So if you guys wish to see a picture of Best Squirrel, then make sure to head on over to our Discord.
Yeah, and as always, that's in the description.
Do it in the art one. That'll be in our art channel.
Thanks for joining us, Ron. We appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to everyone who's joined us tonight. This has been it's been awesome to see the interactions here in the chat, and just you guys listening and watching us, you guys have some great questions, some great insight as well. Especially to Cyberwolf Rights for saying start role playing Miss Ventures.
Yeah, I think that's a fun idea.
That would be fun. I think that might also help with just figuring out Mage Mouse's magic again, because I think that's one thing consistently being silly and ironic, and not just being just dumb, right? Because it's very easy to take something that you think is funny and for it to just slide into being dumb, which is why, despite the fact that one of the characters that I love to write for, Bob the Virus from The Legend of the Ten Lords, while I love writing his scenes, he is one of the hardest characters to write for, because since he's insane and his magic reflects his insanity and it's always going, it takes a lot of effort to not just let that just become humdrum, that it's always kind of cranked up to 11, but at the same time that it doesn't overstay its welcome. Yeah. And that's a hard balance to hit, but when it works, Bob is hilarious and terrifying at the same time.
Like a Bill Cipher.
Yeah, like Bill Cipher. You know, if I get to see artwork one day of Bob and Bill hanging out, then my life will be complete.
Wow, the idea of Discord from MLP. Actually, that's a pretty accurate description, not gonna lie.
Wait, what?
There's a character in My Little Pony called Discord, and he is essentially pure chaos.
Discord. Yeah, I love Discord's character. As someone who is a brony, yes, I am a brony.
I've babysat enough children to know.
Yeah. I love Discord's character, and they did a fantastic job of balancing out a character who actually who is insane, who is absolutely chaotic, but at the same time has a lot of personality that's separate from him just being crazy. crazy. His personality is not crazy. His personality is way more complex. That was fantastic writing on the part of the creators of MLP.
Yeah, he's not just like superficial, not superficial, like surface level, chaotic, crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
He's got layers.
Yeah.
He's still an
layers.
Onion. He's an ogre.
An ogre. His perch
ogre,
not
got
an
layers.
Well, I guess we'll just close out of this.
Night fishing.
As always, thanks for listening. The
so
Discord's
again,
down in the
everyone.
description. You guys are awesome as always. We love the chat. And we love you in the chat.
Oh yeah. Ooh, and quick thing. We are doing a live stream again next week, and then we'll revert back to the every 2 weeks type deal. We wanted to make sure that we didn't have too long of a break between live streams. So once more, we'll be doing this again on Friday, but then we'll be going back to our bi-weekly schedule.
Yeah, or every other week.
Every week, baby.
All right, Camille, take us home.
Okay.
Do the thing.
Bye, Mom.